Hello. Well, we can't get together for Bible class, so I thought I'd come to you and study the Bible with you. I thought we should look at the book of Proverbs. Proverbs is one of my favorite books, and it's got a great topic. If I had to describe Proverbs in one word, I would use the word wisdom. Life is filled with choices. We have to make choices every day, and there are good choices and bad choices. And how do we make those choices? Well, we use wisdom. We can either use wisdom or folly, and hopefully use wisdom. And Proverbs gives us insight into how to live every day with wisdom. So I'm going to begin in chapter 1, and then I'll be coming back to you a few times a week, and we'll talk about chapter by chapter, different chapters of the book of Proverbs. So we'll start in chapter 1, and if you have your Bibles there, you can read with me, and or you can just listen as I read the scripture together. From the New American Standard Version, it says, the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. To know wisdom and instruction, to discern the sayings of understanding, to receive instruction in wise behavior, righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the naive, to the youth knowledge and discernment. A wise man will hear and increase in learning, and a man of understanding will acquire wise counsel. To understand a proverb and a figure, the words of the wise and their riddles. There is a need to know wisdom. And he said the Proverbs were written so that we might know wisdom. Do you know wisdom? Do you want to know wisdom? How wise are you? Wisdom is the ability to make a decision, knowing what the conclusion of the decision will be before we even make the decision. And for instance, we see somebody who's made a great investment, and we say, hey, that was a wise investment. What we mean was he had some kind of insight into how the results would be before he even made that investment. We say that's wisdom. Wisdom is skillful living. It's how to live a successful life. It's how to live life with discernment. And so it's more than information. Wisdom is more than information. I mean, we have tons of information now today. We have Google. All we have to do is go on the internet. We can find all the information that we want. One thing lacking today seems to be wisdom. We need wisdom. We think we're wise, but what we have is information. Schools give out degrees, and we think because of that we have wisdom. We don't. We have information. Wisdom is how to use the information. It is how to be discerning. It is how to use prudence. And so we use words like character and moral excellence and virtue and respect. These all have to do with wisdom. Here in verse 5, he says, a wise man will hear and increase in learning. That's one thing about wisdom. You never stop getting wiser. A wise person knows he's not arrived yet. He knows there's a lot more for him to learn. And so we are going to be looking at Proverbs, and hopefully we'll learn how to be wise people. Verse 7 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Fear. The word fear means respect. It means to hold in high esteem, to honor, to want to please that person. It's not to cringe and cower as if God were a tyrant. It's a worldview that says I'm living with the idea that God is in charge. I'm living with respect to God. What's imperfect in the world? Well, one thing that makes the world imperfect for sure is people have a lack of respect for God. And so this is where wisdom begins. It begins with understanding a world point that God has created everything, that God has given us the way to behave towards one another. And so we want to become wise. We want to be successful in our lives. Verse 8, he says, hear, my son, your father's instructions, and do not forsake your mother's teachings. Now, this is an important aspect of Proverbs, I think. It's from a parent to a child. It's from a father and a mother to their children. And here in Proverbs, which is somewhat unique to Jewish literature, by the way, is that the mothers take a leading role in this. It's not just the father's teaching, but the mother's teachings as well. Parents have the responsibility to teach their children wisdom, parental instruction. You know, this is why I wanted to do the book of Proverbs for one reason anyway, is because we're stuck at home. Some of you are stuck with your kids at home. And this is a great opportunity to sit down and have some Bible lessons with your kids. Proverbs is something not just for adults. Even kids can understand the book of Proverbs, and they can gain wisdom and insight into daily life. And so I wanted to go through Proverbs because I thought it would be good for us as parents to be able to sit down with our kids. And they're practical lessons, practical life lessons we all should know. We should all know lessons about God and about speech, when to talk and when to be quiet. We should know about sex and relationships. And we should know about work and finances. And all these things are covered in the book of Proverbs. He takes a look at all these basic things, and some of them he just beats like a drum over and over and over. We'll see some of these topics come up again and again as week after week we look at a chapter of the book of Proverbs. Something that's not just for adults here, it's kids. And one of the things I encourage you maybe to have your kids do is they could, as an art project, draw an aspect of Proverbs. I remember asking a class to do this one time of kids, and they came up with the most magnificent art. You know, their feet go down into Sheol. And I had a kid, he had footsteps going down into a grave. I thought, wow, what a great way to picture this. And so Solomon uses this picturesque speech and these images. And so sit down with your kids and say, hey, how would we draw this? What would this look like? And help them to have this lesson be part of their life. Solomon, if alive today, you know, what kind of school do you think he might teach at? What grade would he teach? I mean, what does a guy with a PhD have to say to kids? And what matters to a PhD that is important for kids? And this is it. It's how to live life. What's required for parents to teach Proverbs? Well, I guess it requires us to be wanting to acquire wisdom ourselves. It means that we have acquired some sense of wisdom. It means that parents, you know, you have to grow up. You have to put away childish things and start to seek wisdom on your own and live a wise life. You know, there's people, millions of people with messed up lives. They can't figure it out. Often they're very smart people. They just haven't figured out wisdom. In what ways are our teens troubled today? Well, one of the problems that teens have is that their parents have not taught them how to live with wisdom. And so it's important for us to look at the book of Proverbs and learn how to be wise. So here's what wisdom is going to look like. It will show you how to look good. It will show you how to be successful. He continues, he says, indeed, they are a graceful wreath onto your head and ornaments about your neck. Make you look good or I'll make you look like an idiot, your decisions. And we want you to look good. We want you have a graceful wreath around your head. And people see you and they know, hey, this guy knows how to make wise decisions. There are people out there that seem like they can't make any good decisions. They don't seem to know the difference between a hearing aid and a hand grenade. They just can't seem to make up their mind of which way to go in their lives. Solomon helps us out. It gives us insight into daily living. And so let's continue reading verses 10 through 19. My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, come with us, let us lie in wait for blood. Let us ambush the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them alive like Sheol, even whole as those who go down to the pit. We will find all kinds of precious wealth. We will fill our houses with spoil. Throw in your lot with us. We shall all have one purse. My son, do not walk in the path with them. Keep your feet from their path. For their feet run to evil, and they hasten to shed blood. Indeed, it's useless to spread the baited net in the sight of any bird. But they lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush their own lives. So are the ways of everyone who gains by violence. It takes away the life of its possessors. One of the big problems our young people have today, of course, is peer pressure. The pressure to live the way others expect them to live rather than the way that God would want them to live. There's words here like let us, over and over, let us, and we will. There's a shortcut here to success. There's a shortcut to wealth. There's a shortcut to pleasure. There's a shortcut we can take. We'll have happiness together. The sin of wanting instant gratification. And that motivates so many people today. They just want to be happy. And whatever looks like it will make them happy, they'll run for, finding out later that it didn't make them happy at all. It was a foolish decision that they made. And so Solomon is going to give us insight in how to make good decisions. He says, hey, just don't run with the peer crowd. Don't run with others. He says, a bird, if you put a net in front of a bird, even a baited net, a bird has enough sense to not go into the net even if he's hungry. He says they're not that foolish, even though they're not that smart. He says, but yet people will run into the biggest traps, will run headlong into trouble without ever thinking about the consequences of our decisions. And he's just telling his son, there's a better way than this. In verses 18 and 19, he tells us that they'll be swallowed up by their own blood. And we've heard this before. He who lives by the sword will also die by the sword. Do not be deceived. As a man soweth, so shall he also reap. What will you gain if you gain the whole world but lose your own soul? Well, what the scriptures are telling us over and over is that there seems to be an easy way. There seems to be a good way, but it ends up not being a way. There's a way that seems right unto a man, but the end thereof is death. And so Solomon is warning his son, be careful of the decisions you make. Be careful about going with the crowd, going with what's cool at the moment, with the newest trend or the newest progressive idea that's coming down the way. Be careful, son, about this. And then he goes on here in the following verses 20. Wisdom shouts in the street. She lifts her voice in the square. At the head of the noisy streets, she cries out. At the entrance of the gates in the city, she utters her sayings. Here, wisdom is personified as a woman. Maybe going back to the idea of the mom, the mother who's teaching the child. Wisdom is this woman who cries out in the streets. Wisdom is not hard to find. It's not there for just a few to see. It is there. It's not a secret society that has wisdom. We all have wisdom available to us. It says it shouts in the streets, even at the entrance of the gates, in the most busy places of life. Wisdom is there. Verse 22, how long, O naive ones, will you love being simple-minded, and scoffers delight themselves in scoffing, and fools hate knowledge? How long? There are some things we need to turn from, and some things we need to turn to. And he's telling them, how long will you continue to do this? Turn from that and turn to wisdom. This idea of a scoffer. Oh my goodness, a scoffer. People who talk and don't know what they're talking about. We know who the scoffer is. I hear scoffers all the time. I mean, we look out at the universe and we see the grandness of what God has made. We see his handiwork, his design and everything. And we say, there must be a God. How else can you explain that? And the scoffer comes around and says, oh, you're wrong. It can't be God. It's got to be some other thing. And they come up with the most ridiculous ways that we could be here. It's like I heard a police officer once say, he says, you have a dead body. And you come to the dead body, and the detective looks at the dead body, and he looks at all the evidence. And after he interviews everybody, and he looks at all the evidence, the detective says, I think it's suspect A. But what if another detective says, I don't like your suspect A? I think the first detective would say to him, okay, what is it you don't like about suspect A? Who looks more guilty of this crime? And that's what we say about God. We're saying, look, A, this looks better. God looks better. And they haven't given us anything that is reasonable explanation of how we got here and why we are here. And so this scoffer, this wisdom is pleading with this scoffer, with this fool. And then verses 24 and following, because I called and you refused, I stretched out my hand and no one paid attention. And you neglected all my counsel. and did not want my reproof, I will also laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your dread comes. When your dread comes like a storm, and your calamity comes like a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you, then they will call on me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but they will not find me, because they hated knowledge and did not choose the fear of the Lord. They would not accept my counsel. They spurned all my reproof. So they shall eat of the fruit of their own way and be satiated with their own devices. For the waywardness of the naive will kill them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. But he who listens to me shall live securely and will be at ease from the dread of evil. God refuses to be the God of the crisis. You know, for some people, God is only of use when there's a crisis. And God says, look, if you're not going to have a relationship with me, if you're not going to want to live as I want you to do, what am I going to do when the storm comes in your life? What am I going to do for you when the crisis comes? And wisdom says, I'm just going to laugh at you. Why didn't you choose more wisely? Why did you make such a foolish decision? There are so many regrets in life. I have regrets. I'm sure you have some regrets. And we can learn wisdom from regrets. I mean, how do you learn wisdom? Well, from making bad decisions, from bad wisdom. I mean, that's one way to do it. You go to the school of hard knocks. I don't know how many people say, wow, I wish I had moved in with my boyfriend, or I wish I had never started smoking. I wish I could take those words back. Or, I wish I'd never started drugs. I wish foolishness is a harsh master. It will hurt you. It will cause you grief and pain. When we talk about sin in Scripture, it's not that we don't like people or don't like people who engage in those things. It's that we know that eventually those things will hurt those people. It's like the law of gravity. I mean, we teach about gravity, not that we don't like gravity, but gravity will hurt you if you ignore it. And sin will destroy you if you ignore it. And that's what we're saying. You can learn from your own experiences. You learn from other mistakes, other people's mistakes. I remember as a young guy, I was thankful I had an older brother. He made a few mistakes, and I thought, wow, put this in the back of my mind. Don't ever do that. And I'm sure my younger brother learned a few things as well. Hey, don't ever do that. Put that in your back of your mind. Don't do that. But we need to help our kids not make the same mistakes we made. We need to help our kids make fewer mistakes, as few mistakes as they can. And so we hope that they can listen. And one of the reasons I wanted to do Proverbs as well is, I'll be honest, it's easy. It's really easy. I'm not here to teach you wisdom. I'm here to learn wisdom from Solomon. And I'm here just to try to help you understand what it says. Am I willing to learn wisdom? Am I willing to put that in my life and live a mature, wise life? As we read through Proverbs, and you read through Proverbs on your own, look at each paragraph and ask your kids and ask yourselves, what is the major emphasis of this paragraph? What's the main thing he wants us to take from this? I think your kids can understand it. I think they can get it. It's not that hard. It's not like we're teaching theology here. We're teaching the simplicity of life when we use wisdom in making our decisions. This chapter ends with some harsh words. The waywardness of the naive will kill them. Back there in Galatians 6:7, do not be deceived. God will not be mocked. As a man soweth, so shall he also reap. The man who reaps to the flesh, sows to the flesh, will also reap from the flesh destruction. And so we're taught to sow to the Spirit, to look at spiritual things, to have discernment, to know what is good and right and profitable for us. In Romans 1, it reflects what he's saying here. Romans 1, God just basically says, okay, fine. I'll give you your own way. Do what you want. And look what happens to us when we get our own way. We just cause ourselves more and more problems. And we look at the world today, we look at all the trials that are in front of us, we need wisdom. Well, I hope this sets the stage for the rest of the book. I want you to seek wisdom. I want you to embrace wisdom. I'll talk to you in a couple of days.